All right, hello there, thrill seekers. It's me and Ziggy over there, if you can't see him. And that was a little bit of a song by the Meat Puppets called Oh Me from the Meat Puppets 2, and I guess Nirvana also covered it on their Nirvana MTV Unplugged. One of my favorite Meat Puppets songs because it's kind of philosophical and interesting. I can't see the end of me, my whole expanse I cannot see. I formulate infinity and store it deep inside of me. I guess that's the chorus? I don't know. Does it come up more than once? Anyway, I like that part of the song. And it's kind of what I want to talk about. Because sometime over the weekend, a clip showed up on my YouTube feed of Richard Dawkins explaining why atheism is true and religion is bad. And I want to show you that clip and talk about it. So here's the clip.
I think that the world is explained fully by science, or will be explained fully by science. There is no evidence for any kind of supernatural being of any kind. And so that it goes against the spirit of science to put your trust in the supernatural when the natural explanation is there, and so much more fun and so much more exciting and so much more interesting. Many of the reasons that people give when you ask them why they become religious, they palpably show that they don't actually know any science. I mean, many of them say, for example, how could you not be religious when you look at the beauty of a tree or a bird or a kangaroo? I mean, how could that just come about by chance? Well, of course it doesn't come about by chance. It comes about by evolution, by natural selection.
Okay, so there you go. The world is explained by science, or will be explained by science, and yeah, it's hard to like Richard Dawkins when he has that accent. He should learn to do like a Cockney or something more down market, and he would be a lot better appreciated, I think. Richard Dawkins here is kind of going after low-hanging fruit, if you're asking me, because he's in a debate with a Mormon, and I didn't give you the rest of the clip, but in the rest of the clip it kind of goes on about how the Book of Mormon is a fake, and I don't even want to go into the Book of Mormon and its fakery because I don't think it's necessary, but he says the world is explained by evolution, as we Americans say it. I grew up around people who said evolution, so I'm used to both ways of saying it, because I lived in Kenya when I was a kid, and they speak with British English over there. So, let's talk about evolution. Just to give you my bona fides, I found this for 50 cents at this little store in downtown the little city I live in. This was one of my favorite books when I was a kid, a book about evolution. My favorite part, of course, was the dinosaur pictures, especially this one. I love that. Nowadays, they don't believe Brachiosauruses lived underwater like that, but yeah, that was considered scientifically accurate back then. Love that picture. And I'm still into reading about evolution. Here's a book. I need to get through this one. This is pretty interesting about the sort of modern sort of take on dinosaur evolution. And I got this when I was in, where was I? Montana. I was in Montana a little while ago. I don't know. Was it a year ago? You guys in Montana tell me when I was there. This I picked up at their museum shop. And then this I just got the other day. Ocean Life in the Time of Dinosaurs. So, yeah, I'm not anti-evolution. But I think what Richard Dawkins is one of these people in the sort of new atheist movement, neo-atheist movement, who really disappoints me. Because he goes consistently after low-hanging fruit, and he doesn't get into the real meat of the thing when it comes to why people would choose to be religious, even in the face of the overwhelming evidence of science. So, let me get into one little thing. Okay, so evolution, just to keep talking like Richard Dawkins does, explains a lot of things. Like, he talks about the evolution of kangaroos and trees and things, and how you can explain it through natural selection and all of that. And yeah, that's great stuff. And it's an explanation that really works, and we can see it in action. There's been documented evidence of evolution in action. One of my favorites was these kind of horseshoe crabs. Apparently in Japan they were it's a thing to fish for horseshoe crabs, but there's a certain kind of horseshoe crab whose the shell has certain dents and things in it that make look like the face of a samurai, and people would throw these back into the ocean, and eventually, as more and more of these got thrown back and were able to procreate and survive as the other ones got eaten, there were more and more, and their faces or their backs started to look more and more like faces of samurai, until these days they look a lot like a face of a samurai. I'll see if I can find a picture and show you, but it's interesting, natural selection, we can see it in action. So I'm not denying natural selection, but let's go to this kind of universal causation thing, because I was thinking about this the other day, and let's see if I can explain my train of thought. So everything, when we talk about where things come from, creation, as we tend to look at it, everything created has something that created it. It doesn't come from nowhere. It's the redistribution and rearrangement of things that are already there. For example, me. My dad and mom got together, and this spark happened that fused the egg and the sperm. And then I as my physical form, is created by my mom consuming food and water and things, and then I get popped out, and then I consume food and water, and I convert that food and water into me. But everything comes from somewhere else and gets reshaped into this. And if I stop eating and drinking, this shape will eventually lose its cohesion and just fall apart. So it's something from something else. It appears it appears to us to be a created thing, but it's just the rearrangement of other things, and everything is like that. The Earth, they tell us, was the result of interstellar gas and dust clumping together in a certain way, and it formed the sun, and then it formed the planets, and it all clumped together. But it came from something. It came from that interstellar dust. And if we go back far enough, we get the whole universe. And now, the Big Bang Theory was the creation myth I learned as a child from my school teachers and things. And I know that these days it's come kind of under fire, but it still kind of hangs in there. But that has it that because space and matter is expanding, we can sort of rewind the tape back to kids. Remember what rewinding tape is? We can rewind all the way back to the beginning, and everything was infinitely dense and then exploded out and became this. But that still begs the question of, where did that infinitely dense thing come from? Did it come from another universe that collapsed, and does it go back forever? At some point, we humans want to have a beginning to all this, but when you actually get into it, you can't have a beginning. There's just no way. In the way we understand how things are made, you can't have a beginning. I got this book that's been sitting on my shelves, and I've only read bits and pieces of it, A Universe from Nothing by Lawrence M. Krauss, but I've watched a bunch of videos in which Lawrence M. Krauss tries to explain what's in this book, and I've had people who've read this book try to explain it to me, and the idea is that there's something rather than nothing, because if you leave nothing alone long enough, there are sort of fluctuations in nothingness that give rise to things. It's really hard to understand exactly how you get that logic, so don't ask me to explain it. But even nothing, we humans can't conceive of nothing as... We can't conceive of nothing. Hey Ziggy, what's up? Ziggy can't conceive of nothing. He can conceive of maybe his friend, his doggy friend Hercules is back there. I don't know. But we can't conceive of nothing because our brains are wired up to to contrast this and that. That's how we recognize the existence of anything, is by contrasting it with other things. So when we try to conceive of nothing, we can't do it, because we can only conceive of nothing as opposed to something. So the idea, at least when I try to conceive of it, of a time when there was nothing at all anywhere, is still in contrast to something. I still put myself in there looking at it, or I can't conceive of it being even absolute nothingness. Seems like it would have had to arise from somewhere. Like it can't just be there eternally, at least in the way I'm thinking it. And don't try to explain all this to me, because I won't get it. So I mean, you can try if you want, but you're going to fail because I can't get it. In Buddhism, we have this concept of shunyata, or mu, or ku, which is represented various ways. I don't know how you spell shunyata in Sanskrit, but it's it's written in letters like we write them, so they represent sounds. But in Japanese and Chinese, you get mu, which represents a piece of paper with flames underneath it. The idea of it just burning up into nothing, which of course it doesn't actually burn up into nothing. It burns up into ashes and then gases and things. It doesn't go anywhere. It's still here, even if you burn it up. And then the other word that's often translated as nothing is ku, which is also the same character as Sora, which means sky. And as we know now, the sky isn't nothing. The sky is full of gases and all kinds of stuff, and it's not nothing at all. In fact, even outer space isn't nothing. So the idea that you can negate all of religion by just negating that bless you, Ziggy, by negating the creation myths that religions have, just seems silly to me. He's going after Mormons, but I'll tell you my experience. I don't know. Do I know any Mormons? I think I have known some people who were raised Mormon in my life, but not currently. I don't hang out with any of those people. So my experience of Mormons is sort of looking from afar. And one of the places I looked at Mormonism was this book called New York Doll. Sorry, I mean a movie called New York Doll. Okay, back to me. Which I rented at, probably a video store somewhere. And it was the story of Arthur Kane, who was the bass player of the New York Dolls. And some of you probably, I'm sure, know New York Dolls were sort of they weren't a punk band because they arrived on the scene before there was any such thing as punk rock, but they were very influential to the punk rock scene, especially to the Sex Pistols. So they were sort of a proto-punk band, but they only lasted a short time. I think they made 2 albums and then broke up, and for the rest of his life, Arthur Kane, their bass player, was kind of at loose ends, just off on his own, trying to get his life together. He got into drugs, he got into all sorts of terrible things, and then he ended up in Los Angeles, and at some point he walked into the big Mormon temple that's on, I believe it's Santa Monica Boulevard. If you follow Santa Monica Boulevard out from Los Angeles towards Santa Monica itself, you'll come across this giant Mormon temple, and apparently Arthur Kane wandered in there one day just trying to see what the deal is with that, and he ended up becoming a Mormon. And the movie, they don't advertise it as being about this, but it is kind of about this. It was put together by some Mormons who were interested in telling Arthur Kane's story as a way to kind of promote Mormonism. I didn't realize this when I rented the thing, but I ended up at the end of that movie thinking, gee, I want to become a Mormon. Not because I believe Joseph Smith was telling the truth, because it's pretty obvious he was making the whole thing up, but because they developed a kind of community that was very supportive and helpful, and the Mormon friends that Arthur Kane had kind of helped Arthur Kane get his stuff together. so that he was able to be in shape to play this reunion gig that the New York Dolls did, and that's kind of the climax of the movie. But the denouement of the movie, which denouement, for those of you who don't know that word, I was talking to somebody the other day and found out she didn't know that word, denouement. Denouement is like the end of the movie or the book or whatever, where all the main action is over, but they're wrapping up the loose ends. So the denouement of New York Doll tells you about how Arthur King died. He apparently was very sick. I think it was cancer of some sort, even during the time that he played that reunion gig, and he didn't know it. And he seems to have, kind of kept himself alive by the sheer force of wanting to play this gig. And he basically played the gig, and then I don't remember exactly the timeline, but not long after, he just died, because he'd been very, very sick even the entire time. So it was quite interesting, and I was really impressed. Now, I know, before you write to me comments and tell me bad things the Mormons have done, I've seen some of those documentaries about the Mormon cults and the polygamy and all this stuff, and I know Mormonism is not without its faults, but I can see the appeal of something like that. And this is why I don't look down upon any kind of religion anymore. I mean, as I said, I'm going to say it again, even though I feel like it's not worth saying again, I'll say it again, that there are problems with it, and there's always religious people who are hypocrites. Zero Defects, the band I was in the early 80s, and I'm in still, we had a song called Christian Hypocrite. Christian Hypocrite, one day under God's way, 7 days of hate, Christians on Sunday. I wanted to rename it Christians on Sunday, because I thought that would be a cleverer title, but we kept the title Christian Hypocrite. But anyway, that I didn't write that song. I think Tommy, our original guitarist, wrote that. But still, I agreed with it, and I can see how that's a problem. But I can also see that for the most part, and I don't know if there's any statistics out there about it, but it just seems to me from eyeballing it, that for the most part, these kind of religions help people just deal with the world, deal with life, and there comes a point where things like the creation of the universe and all of that, they're beyond our ability. This is my conviction. There's no way the human mind can understand that. So I don't think Richard Dawkins is correct. I think Richard Dawkins is wrong when he says science will explain everything. I don't think science will ever explain everything, because you can't do it with science, because science is about looking at cause and effect relationships within the material universe and then trying to understand them. The problem is that the human mind is limited, and we can never see all of the causes that go into the effects that we see. But because we're pretty clever, we can see a great deal of those causes, and because of that, we can do things like invent the machine that you're watching this video on right now. So anybody who tries to deny science on the internet, I've said this in books, it's just stupid, because you're using the creation of science. So science is a great thing, but it's never going to explain everything, and it's never going to explain the creation of the universe. It just can't do that. So, yeah, that's my reaction to the Richard Dawkins things, and I just thought I'd put it out there because I thought it might be a little bit entertaining to talk about and think about. But I think in the end, I have respect for religions and what they do. But I think one of the things they don't do very well is explain the origin of the universe. That's just... But you can kind of just go... You can just kind of go with that, You can kind of just sort of go, all right, well, fine, whatever, about the origins of the universe. Even the Buddhist universe origin stories are kind of goofy. That's why the Dogen stream of Buddhism doesn't even bother with them, but they do exist. Oh, and before I sign off, I want to say something. Somebody in the comments section was saying that... Whoa, I think Ziggy saw a squirrel. Oh no, he saw a bird. Anyway, somebody in the comments section was saying I was wrong. It wasn't... what was it I was talking about the last time? I was talking about Sanji no Go, or Sanji Go, karma in the 3 times. And they said it wasn't the supernatural elements in Sanji no Go that people were talking about and fussing about. It was the supernatural elements in Hokkyoji, which is another piece of Dogen's writings, and I'm not going to try to explain. Actually, I meant to say Hokkyoki, not Hokkyoji. Hokkyoji is the name of a temple I was at a few months ago, or maybe a year ago. Hokkyoki is a book that Dogen wrote. It's basically a diary of his time in China, studying with his teacher Tendo Nyojo, or Ju Qing, or Ru Jing. There's various ways of spelling his name. So I went and read Hokkyoki. I've read it before, but I read it again this weekend. And I'm like, I just don't see the supernatural elements in Hokkyoki. I don't know what they're talking about. I saw one reference to Buddha's supernatural powers that was sort of a passing reference, and a couple of references to reincarnation, and then nothing else. So if you're one of the people who left that comment, because I can't find the comment anymore, where's the supernatural elements in Hokkyoki? Tell me in the comments below, or write to me at bw@hardcorezen.info. All right, that's it. That's all I got to say. We'll see you later. If you want to donate to me doing more of this kind of stuff, you can go to the URL that you're about to see on the screen below, or that you're about to hear. If you're listening on the audio podcast, it is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That's where you'll find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts, and those are my main ways of making a living. And as always, you don't gotta support me if you don't want to support me. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye.
Hey Ziggy, what did you see? Did you see a bird or a squirrel or something, or a cat? Did you see a cat, or was it? Oh, he's gonna go look. Okay, let's see what he's gonna go see.